Joining me now, NewsNation political contributor Denise Gitsham. She's also a Republican strategist. Denise, thanks for staying with us. As we expect this bilateral to start any minute now, what are you expecting from their conversations today?
Well, it sounded like a positive start based on how Trump, greeted the press and characterized what he hoped would be a great meeting. And they do have a lot to talk about. If you look at what Australia is doing to ensure that its nuclear powered submarine class is going to be beefed up to counter Chinese growth in its Navy. Clearly, even though Australia and China are very big trading partners, Australia clearly wants to have stronger relationships with the U.S. because they see that as a counterbalance to what they think is potential aggression from China. And after all, we've been partners and allies for over 100 years. They've fought in every war we've fought. They've been at our side. They've been long and steady allies. And so I think it's going to be a great meeting. I think it's going to be very productive.
This is the first official meeting between Australia's Prime Minister and President Trump since he returned to the White House. Why now?
Well, I think a lot of those biggest pressing issues where there were wars, President Trump has had a lot to deal with on the international front. Let's just put it that way. And I think that maybe this wasn't as high of a priority. Things are relatively stable. We're in relatively good standing with each other in spite of the tariffs. And I think that as long as there's no, squeaky wheel, we had to focus our oil on other places in the world. But now that this big Gaza deal is supposedly going to work out, we're hopeful, right? We can only pray that it will. He can focus on shoring up his strength with our allies.
Australia, of course, a major ally of the United States, but Australia's biggest trade partner is China. So I was talking earlier with A. Scott Bolden about how the Prime Minister is going to have to kind of walk a fine line today. How much of their relationship with China becomes part of the discussions today?
Well, it seems like they're kind of frenemies, right? Even though they're the largest trading partners, there's a reason that Australia is purchasing this big nuclear powered submarine buy. And that's because they're concerned about growing aggression from China in the Indo-Pacific region. Everyone is concerned and they're watching China. So again, it is very much a frenemy issue where they have to be close because of their trading relationship. But at the same time, they're hedging against what China's doing. And that seems to be a growing threat.
Today, also day 20 of this government shutdown. We're expecting another vote today, but another vote that's expected to fail.
Yeah, this shutdown, it's interesting because I actually live in California and I'm back here in D.C. for the week. And absolutely, nothing's happening in this building behind me here at the Capitol. And in California, we're really not feeling the effects of anything right now because, we're far from the Beltway. And I think most of the impact is being felt here in the DMV region. But soon this is going to happen. Something real is going to happen to Americans and they're going to start feeling it. And it really bothers me that over the weekend I was watching, politicians not really doing the work of getting the job done, but actually just fighting again in the media. And, I say that as a Republican who sees the same thing on my side as I do on the Democratic side with Schumer and all these Democrats marching in the No Kings protests. It just feels like nobody is really able to get the job done. No one's able to do the hard work of getting past their own political interests to do the hard work of meeting the needs of Americans, which are going to become really real come November 1st. I think that a lot more work needs to be done, but I think the only person who can actually fix this is President Trump, who's the ultimate deal maker. I feel like he's waiting in the sidelines to see how this all pans out between the leaders of the two parties. And I think he's going to come in with a save the day moment. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened before the beginning of the month, before the beginning of November. And I have a feeling that he's going to step in and people are going to say, wow, here comes the deal maker. We're finally going to get the relief that we need.
Yeah, and you talked about some of these key dates, and I think we showed them on the screen there, these key dates that are going to be coming up. We've already talked about people, losing paychecks, but then you start to expand that, right? More and more people are not going to be getting paid. We're approaching Thanksgiving, a lot of people traveling. What does that mean for TSA agents? So I think a lot of people are standing back and watching and wondering, what is it going to take? When will these lawmakers really start to feel the pressure?
Yeah, well, I thought it would happen when the Senate staffers missed their second paycheck. So we'll see how that goes because, You know, when you've got the people who are supposed to be making the deal happen in the Senate, not being able to make their mortgage payments, not being able to feed their families. Listen, the average salary for a Senate staffer is around $80,000. I was one of those Senate staffers once upon a time. There's no way I could have afforded to skip 2 paychecks, much less 1. And so a lot of these Senate staffers are about 32 years, on average 32 years old. They've got young families. They need to, and they're doing the hard work, and they're not getting paid, unlike their bosses. And so I think more senators should probably do the noble thing and forego their pay in solidarity with their staffers. Only 3 of them that I've seen of so far have said that they would. But in the meantime, I think the people who are doing the work of making this deal come together, they're probably going to get really frustrated soon and get antsy. And I think that's going to also inspire senators to do the hard work of saying, let's figure this out. Whatever the grand compromise is, let's get America back on track.
And I would imagine that's going to be the point that lawmakers on both sides say, okay, like, I mean, right now they sort of both feel like they don't really have an incentive to sort of change things, right? They're okay with dragging this out because they're not really necessarily feeling the pressure when it comes to polling or any of that. But I would imagine that pressure is only going to ramp up.
Well, yeah, when you see WIC recipients stop getting food stamps on November 1st, when you skip, potentially run out of money, the administration runs out of ways to get creative with the math and pay military and federal law enforcement officers, that's when you're really going to see that ripple effect into America. And look, I think this should happen way before then. I don't like the politics. I think most Americans are tired of the politics on both sides. And I say that as somebody who believes the Republican Party is doing the responsible thing by getting ahead of the healthcare issue, by fixing it systematically. Because look, I feel like every shutdown that goes on this long is always about healthcare, and we've never actually fixed that issue and made it affordable for Americans. And so this near-term fix that I think Democrats are proposing is not the answer. It's actually what caused our healthcare premiums to skyrocket, almost 100%. And so we've got to find a balance between the responsibility of what the Republicans are trying to do, which is to fix it forever and save taxpayer dollars, but also meet the near-term needs of hurting Americans who didn't expect their premiums to double. So there's a lot of work to be done in the middle. Again, I think only President Trump is going to be able to come in with his leadership gavel and say, enough, guys. This is what we're going to do. And I know that Republicans will fall in line. But in the meantime, Democrats have to be willing not to hold Americans hostage for their own political purposes. And it's crazy to me that Chuck Schumer would call it irresponsible back in March when he decided to vote for this and talk about how much it hurt Americans, and at the same time continue to do this marching instead of sitting at a table and trying to strike a deal.
Yeah, we'll see if those conversations happen today, though it doesn't look very likely. All right, Denise Gitsham, thanks for joining us.